Hello, everyone. Anything to anybody?
Hello. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Friday, the December 22nd, and I am very happy to have Darryl Robert Schoon with me tonight. Darryl, welcome.
How you doing, David? Good to be here.
Good. Good.
So I stopped doing all my affirmations. A year and a half later, the biggest bust of my life comes in, 10-year federal prison sentence. But even that was a miracle. The lawyer who handled me, which is the top criminal attorney in the United States, the guy they were after wanted her to be his lawyer. She came and took me instead. And $60 an hour, she's going to be paid $100,000. That's a miracle. That's a miracle. Another miracle was that I'm headed for whoever knows kind of prison. And I hear these words in my head as I'm waist chained, manacled, and in leg irons in transit to county jail. And I hear the words, you're supposed to meet somebody. The person I met there, what happened was 2 weeks later, I'm in Lompoc Federal Prison Camp, no fence, club fed. Ehrlichman and Haldeman went there. I'm at a lowest security prison, but that wasn't the miracle. The miracle was my first week at Lompoc Federal Prison Camp, I met Howard Hughes's banker, who told me his story under duress. He never intended to tell anyone. The story was about how the Reagan White House and the CIA skimmed and embezzled $500 million he had raised from the Saudi royal family for the Afghan resistance. And because they were afraid he was going to spill the beans, kicked him out of the deal and sent him to prison, where he met me, and he told me the story.
That's why the
Where?
Clintons kill people.
Clintons didn't do it.
No, I'm joking. I'm saying that's why the Clintons kill
But you
people
know what?
because they learned they can talk.
Nah, you use the word Clintons. You know why? Because I know you're biased. And you know who put that bias in you? The boys who really control it, the Republicans. The Republicans are the repository of military and corporate power in America. They were in control of Reagan.
I could have said Bush.
Reagan, no. Bush, no. Reagan was a president this time.
Right.
All right? Reagan was the president this time. But Bush had already been, he was coming in later. They control the White House and the CIA and government. They're the ones who pull the trigger. The Democrats are fucking inept. They can't fucking shoot their way out of a goddamn bag. That's why Kennedy got killed and not Reagan. That's where it comes from. Government. And you know what? I had that story. I'll tell you something, David. I had the story and I had the documentation. And you know what? This is how the media is controlled. Nobody wanted to hear it.
Yeah.
I sent copies of what I knew to the San Francisco Chronicle, to the LA Times, to the New York Times, to the Washington Post, to A&E reports, and they all blew me off. When I got out of prison, I went to see Dianne Feinstein. I was on her China committee. She knew who I was. She sent out her aide to talk to me. He knew who I was. And as I'm telling him this story, I knew he didn't want to hear it. The politicians are too afraid to take on the CIA. The last politician that took on the CIA, his name was Frank Church. They invested in the CIA. The next election, he was rolled. He was gone. They know what happened. But I'm going to tell you something. In April of this year, I get an email from somebody out of the blue, April 2023. Dear Mr. Schoon, my name is Peter Osborne. I'm an Australian researcher. Did you know that did you know Danny Casolaro? And did you know that when he was killed, he had a copy of your paper, Betrayal, in his possession? Now, do you know who Danny Castellero is, David?
He's the investigative reporter who was killed in D.C.
He was killed in 1991.
Yeah.
I didn't know Danny Castellero. And I didn't know he had a copy of the paper I had written summing up the Reagan CIA conspiracy. Peter Osborne sent me a copy of it. He had access to those papers. I had never seen a copy of that since I typed it out. There it was, IBM Selectric, that I typed it on in prison. It was called Betrayal. You knew he was killed. He was murdered because he was getting close. All right? I know people get killed in this business for knowing that. I know that everyone I took that story to didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And I know why. But I threw the I Ching on every time I did it because it's dangerous, this game. All right? And this is what it is. And I know the spin, the Clintons, fuck that bullshit Watergate. Because I know who put that shit in your brain. I know who's spinning out that shit. The boys who really have the killers. And they made Carter look like a fool with Iran. And it was no accident, coincidence, that when Reagan got elected, the day he got elected, the Iranians did that release. And now the word's coming out. But it doesn't matter because everybody's forgotten. And they're masters at spin. They own the game. They own it. And that's why here we are, the day before, week before Christmas. It's not an accident. This is the first day of the solstice. Do you know that?
Yes, yeah. Yesterday was the solstice.
Because yesterday was the solstice, which is the darkest day of the year. And you're interviewing me on the day the light is returning.
Right.
Now, that may be significant. That may not be. Who can say what is significant? Because it's also problematic. But all I can say is this. It was during that prison sentence where I had my adversity that I met Howard Hughes's banker, that I had that period of enlightenment, and that I heard those words about the time of the vulture, which started me studying economics, which years later brought me a forum where I could talk about money that people would understand. So, when you asked about the adversity and all the stuff I've gone through, my answer is this. If I had to do it over again, I would do it. And that's the truth of most people who've learned something from their adversity. It was rather brutal, granted. Nonetheless, I learned things that I never would have learned had not I meditated and been there by myself for all those years. And during those years, I met a lot of extraordinary people. A lot of extraordinary people. I met a lot of my friends. I mean, we were all drug dealers. Yeah. One of my closest friends. I'm in Terminal Island, Terminal Island. I've been for 5 years. I'm walking across a goddamn yard, Everybody's, there's barbed wire. We're level 5, gun towers. I'm walking across the yard and I hear, "Hey, Darryl!" And I look over. This is my roommate from Marin County, 1981. He's in there on a 20-year sentence. All right? Our paths cross again. How in the hell were we going to meet again? At a choice. It's not by choice, except at a certain level. And there it was. There we met once again. And life goes on. Life is not what we think it is, thank God. Because if it was If life was the way I thought it was, David, we'd be fucked. And there wouldn't be a chance in hell. And now, you know what I know? I don't care what we think it is. What I think it is, it's a goddamn miracle. And even if we do die in the miracle, and we all die in the miracle, life is eternal. And I didn't know that going into it. And I wouldn't have bet on it. And I wouldn't have believed it. But now I know. 2 years before I wrote my book, Time of the Vulture, before I got my reputation on the internet in money, we ran into a psychic. I didn't sort of believe in psychics. I thought, I knew they were there. I knew some were better than others. But Martha and I meet this psychic, 2006. All right? We go into him. Didn't know who this guy was, but he had a reputation in certain circles. And what you did before you went in, you wrote down on a piece of paper the names of 5 people, quote, in spirit. All right? Who are on the other side. They don't say they're dead, they're in spirit. I was at this time, this is what, 2005?
Was this Bob the candle maker?
No. He was the one who did my astrology chart.
Oh, okay.
Okay. This is a psychic, Hoyt Robinette, 2006. Never met him. You wrote down people who were in spirit who had died. And I didn't know many at that time. Now I got a list. I'll fill up a couple pages because this is 15, 18 years later. Most of my friends are on the other side. All right. I'm 78 now. Then I was in my 60s, 50s. All right. I was 61. All right. And you write down 5 names. Then you write down 5 questions. And you sign your name. And you fold it with a piece of paper. Okay. So we walk in there. I hand this guy my piece of paper. He takes it in his hand. He doesn't unfold it and he doesn't read it. He's holding it in his hand. And he looks at me and goes, there's May here. And I go, yeah, it's my mother. He said, yeah, your mother. And then he said, and there's Hamilton. Because that's my father. I had written their names down. Okay. He said, yeah. Father. And then he sort of closes his eyes like he's listening. And then he says, he wants me to know he's a part of this project. Now, remember I told you about Bob the candle maker who did my chart? And he said, the person with this aspect, as astrological aspect, is going to have a war with one of his parents, probably his father. Hey, I had a war with my dad. Lasted years. And it was bitter. You had a totally different relationship with your dad. But it would, in your chart, I'm sure it would have been that way. Mine was, that was a war. So here's Hoyt talking to my father. And my father's telling Hoyt that he's a part of this project. Now, I know my life is weird. Haight-Ashbury, law school, prison, jail, hearing voices, seeing things, limitations, lots of money, lots of adversity. Very unusual. But my father's telling Hoyt that he's a part of this project. I went, wow, that's far out. Somebody had to take the opposite side. Somebody had to be my dad and have us at war. He was baked in the cake. And my dad's telling Hoyt, he knew that. It's part of the deal. Wow. And then Hoyt goes to me, you're a teacher. I go, no. He's listening. He goes, well, you teach. I go, no. This is 2005. I didn't talk. I didn't do anything. I was at war with the goddamn universe. You know? I knew a handful of people and didn't give a fuck about knowing anybody else. My joke was the only people I get along with were waiters in restaurants because I love to eat. And maybe I could say, if you're sitting at the next table, boy, wasn't that ossobuco good? And you go, yeah, best ossobuco. I said, you know what? That the front shanks, they're even more tender than the rear ones. I knew that about food. And other than that, I didn't want to fucking talk with you about anything, right? Because the difference between how you thought and I thought was huge. And I had my circle down to 5 people. And Hoyt goes, will you teach? I go, no. And he goes, well, you know things other people don't know. And I said, Everybody thinks that. I, however, have no voice. I have no audience. And Hoyt said, this will soon change. People will begin seeking you out. This is 2005. In 2006, I started writing that what was going to be my book. Didn't even start out as a book. In 2007, I delivered that talk at Marshall Thurber's Positive Deviant Network. The dues were $5,000 a year. We met 4 times a year. It was a closed network, invitation only, and there were some really rich fucks in that room. And when I delivered my talk called Time of the Vulture, most people got really uptight. The idea that I was saying they're going to lose all their fucking money and it's going to go to shit, they didn't want to hear it. That was March 2007. And in September 2008, all hell broke loose. Wall Street banks went bunks. And if the Fed hadn't bailed them out, the whole game would have been over. In January, Bitcoin was released to the world. And in April, I gave that talk that's on my website called The Greatest Depression. Will Bitcoin hold its value? I doubt it. Because there's nothing behind it except scarcity. And the government doesn't control it. And people are just like the government, just as prone to fraud.
Well, the banks have
cornered.
The banks are grabbing control of Bitcoin now.
They're trying to. But the ones who control Bitcoin are the 5 or 6 whales that still own most of it, and nobody knows who they are. And they run you up, they run it down, they make it, you get into it, then they sell you out on the top, and they wait for you to fall back down. 5 or 6 people, whales they call it. Nobody knows who they are.
Or governments.
No, it's not government. They weren't in there in the beginning. No, they weren't. Bitcoin was not a government conspiracy. Governments are trying to get into it now. So everybody's trying to get into it because it proved to have legs that nobody thought they had. Stunning.
Well, would you rather? Well, you know, it's funny. You'll see Bitcoin move $4,000 in a day. Not unusual.
Of course.
Which is twice the price of which is twice the price of what gold is for an ounce. So people look at that and people are like, well, why would I buy gold when I can buy Bitcoin?
Fine. Buy Bitcoin and talk to me in 5 years.
No, that's what people are saying.
I know. The
Do you know
government
Max Kaiser?
Listen.
Yeah.
Fuck this shit and fuck Max Kaiser. I know who he is.
He said, sell all your gold and silver and buy Bitcoin.
Fuck Max Kaiser. You know my talk that I gave in 2009? That's on my website.
Yeah.
I mentioned Sandeep Jaitley on it. You don't know that. But I said, and I knew Sandeep at the time. I just met him through the professor. And Sandeep ran a hedge fund in London, precious metal hedge fund. And Sandeep said, you know, before this thing collapses, I expect the Dow to go over 30,000. I thought it was bullshit. You know,
I think it's at 37 right now.
Yeah, and the Dow was 8,000 then.
Yeah.
And that's what Sandeep said. And I'll tell you something about it. Sandeep used to be a regular on Max Kaiser's show. A regular. Until Sandeep said, cryptocurrency is full of shit. There's nothing behind it.
Yeah.
It's a shadow game. So tell me about Max. Tell me more about the shit that you read and you hear on the internet. You know, and I just may be old and I just may be tired. But you know.
No, I was very surprised. No, I was very surprised.
Because in 1980, in that decade, Gold went from $35 an ounce to, what was it, $450 an ounce, $420 an ounce in 16 years, 18 years. And it exploded in price. Exploded because of inflation. And when the Fed saw that, they went and started controlling the price of gold. Ever since then. When the 2008 collapse happened, which is when you would think gold would go up because it's a chaos indicator,
Yeah.
it started to move. And the bank, Swiss National Bank, sold over 20,000 ounces of gold into the market to keep its price down.
That's when
So
England
now,
sold. That's
people
when
see-
England sold all their gold.
All the gold, 1980. No, they sold the gold in 2000.
Okay. Yeah.
Whenever the markets start going crazy, the boys that control the game fuck with gold.
Yeah.
Because they don't want gold to be the counterweight that is to paper. And it worked. And that's why people tell you, David, gold goes up and down $20, $40 a day. And Bitcoin moves that in an afternoon. Why should I buy gold?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know why? I know why they think. David, I know why people think the things they think. It's common sense that they think them. I used to call them fools before this interview tonight. And it was only when we started this interview I realized, and I made that distinction. No, they're not fools. They've been fooled. And that's a distinction I did not make until you fucking started talking to me this evening. That's new in my thought. They're not fools.
Just
They've
that's
been
form of ignorance.
And I know, and I know why they've been fooled. I know why they think the way they think. And it's just understandable. And that's why I know that it's going to come crashing down. Because the boys that control them and the way they think, they ain't as big as they think they are. They ain't as big as they think they are. The universe, which created us all, is about to change the game. And the economic collapse is a part of that shift. And the earth changes, and the weather is a part of that. It's all a part of that shift. There's a reboot on the way. It's not the reboot that the modern people think is a reboot. There's a bigger reboot coming.
You see the question from Charlie?
No, what is it? What is it? Read it for me.
It says, how soon is the crash?
I don't know. Tell Charlie this. If he goes to my website and listens to that talk that I gave in Hungary in 2009, I thought it was right around the corner. You know, it's like once you see a crack, and I gave the metaphor in my talk. I talked about that bridge in 1990 that a structural engineer found out there's a fucking crack in it. Then he saw it in 1980, and he started warning people. Well, that bridge in Minneapolis was used by thousands of people a day.
Yeah.
And he alerted people. And they saw it, there's a crack there. When's it going to crack? And I don't know. But if you ask me, we got to fix it. But you know what it cost to fix it? The biggest cost was rerouting all those people. So they never did it. And it probably took 18 years for it to go down, and hundreds died when it went away. But you know what? That structural engineer, he probably took the long way around for the first years. And nobody else did. In fact, everyone goes, Charlie, hey, you still driving that thing? God damn it. You're going to die before it cracks. And you know what? They were right. So if you listen to my talk on my website, Greatest Depression, I gave that talk in April of 2009. And I mentioned Sandeep Chait.
Coming up on 15 years ago.
Yeah, 15 years ago. And I thought it was right around the corner. Well,
objects in mirror are closer than they appear.
Well, because I never expected them to do quantitative easing. They'd only jiggled the interest rates before, and they did. So they did something that I had never expected them to do. So you never know.
And they could,
But
they could
really,
do something new now.
they could just not know. But I don't think so.
No, they'll
And this
start
is why.
another war. They'll start a war.
No, doesn't matter. It's going to come down again because the universe is moving. It's bigger than them. They are not in control of the timeline this time. There was a
So
book.
if they introduce aliens and say, these are the aliens and this is proof that there's no God, and they starting all these distractions.
You know what? I believe in aliens.
Yeah, they're real.
UFOs.
Yeah, sure.
They're real. And I think they're like the rest of us. There's a few assholes out there, but most of them aren't.
Yeah.
And if you are floating around in an airship, you're a lot more evolved than we are here.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think most of the extraterrestrials are of a far higher consciousness than we are. They just can't interfere with us because of our free will that we've been given. And the free will is going to come. And we're going to get the dose of that free will. Now,
well, what about?
Thing is,
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
About the prediction. When I made that, if you hear my talk, I thought it was imminent. All right, I really thought it was imminent. But I want to go back to an earlier thing. My son Benjamin went to MIT. Okay, graduated in '94. Kid's trying to build his life. He's got a fucking asshole for a father who's screaming that it's all rigged, that the economy's fucked. All right, and we're headed for the drink. That was me, by the way. All right. And here he is in his early 20s. He isn't married. He wants to have a life. And I'm painting doom and gloom. All right. But he doesn't know what I know. He got a degree in computer science. And besides the shit I teach, they don't teach at Harvard and MIT in economics classes. They teach the bullshit. So even if he was an econ major, he would really not have believed me. All right. But I'm his dad. And he's been around me a long time and seen me come up with some weird shit. So he finally started looking at what I was saying. And he's smart. And you know what he said? He said, Dad, you may be right. Right? He's saying this in the 1990s. You may be right. He said, but you know who they are. And they've got a lot up their sleeve. All right? And I think about that sleeve. And I think about what he said then. And I think about they pulled QE out that I had no expectation of. But you know what? I do a lot of reading of stuff that's beyond this sphere. And one of them was called The Manual Survival. It was all channeled by extraterrestrials. And I started reading this channeling in 2011, 2010. All right. And I read it through for the next 3 years, almost every day. And you can find it on the web. It's called Manuscript of Survival. It was channeled by Aisha North, 500 pages. This is a big set of channels from extraterrestrials. And they said this: we call ourselves the constant companions. We have been with you since the beginning, and we are watching what's happening. And we are here to warn you. We know that with many of you are very concerned about the earth because of what's been going on with it. Our advice is, don't worry about the earth. The earth has been created to withstand all sorts of things. It will survive. You, however, are under another set of mandates. And unless you change your ways, you won't survive. And this is going to happen in the next few years. That's what we're telling you. Now, go up there, Google The Manuscript of Survival, Aisha North. It's free. It's a PDF download. Okay? Now, what happened is, I was reading it last year before I wrote my last book, Docking to the Mothership, and I was looking for a correspondence with Carlos Castaneda. And 500 pages, if you forget where it is, nothing's footnoted. You can go through a lot of pages to try and find it, never find it. But I'm out there because I'm writing this book, and I'm reading every page to see if the goddamn references there. I never found it, by the way. I know it's in there. But as I was doing that reading, I ran into something else. The constant companions were talking about the economic system. Shit, there they are. And I read the section of where they're talking about the economy. And this was in 2014. And they said, it is all going to come crashing down. Not by what we have done, are going to, no intervention on our part, but the latest crises, they did something that they're not going to recover from. That was the 2008 crisis, quantitative easing. And it said, it is going to give way. And you say, what does that mean? We say everything that has been built on their world credit and debt is going to be washed away. And if you believe in it, you will be washed away too. That's what the cut is. A new world is coming. And if you want to hang on to the old, you will pay the consequences. Because life, as always, is a matter of choice. As you have been always telling others around you, choose wisely. That's what this is. It's your choice whether you're going to make it through or not. You can choose to hang on to the world that's passing away, the world of conflict, competition, and scarcity. Or you can be open to the world that's coming. You don't have to know what it is. You really can't know what it is. But you can be open to it. That's all you can be. And you can let go more easily if you know this, knowing a better world is coming. It said, the forces that have controlled your planet, who you, David, would call the Matrix, and many other people, are being kicked off this goddamn planet for once and for all. They have controlled it. They have used you and the human race much as fodder for their own games. And they have lived off of your energy for the past few thousand years. Their experiment is over. The universe is moving. Let it happen and know it. That's in there. That's in there. It's free. Manuscript of Survival, channeled by some extraterrestrials who call themselves the Constant Companions. That's all I can tell you that. I ran across them around 2011, just on the web. And once I started reading them, I saw them every day. I read all until they finally stopped doing it. And they basically said this: we're leaving you now because you made the turn. Humanity has made the turn. You are going to make it.
What year was it that they ended?
2000, they ended in 2014.
Oh, the same year they started.
No, they started in 2010 or 11.
Oh, okay.
They channeled for around 3 years, and it's all up there. It's called Manuscript of Survivals. It's in chunk.
Yeah, you had told me about that before, and I've read some of it, but like you said, there's a lot of information. There's a lot there.
There's a lot of it. And when I went, I in the back of my mind, when I saw the stuff they'd done on finance, I go, yeah, I can put my financial writings into it. So in Document the Mothership, the middle section is filled with all my articles I'd written, most of which nobody's ever read, because the only people reading them were the gold and silver people during that time. You know, on one of the sites, what was called Market Oracle, they kept track of my articles that I submitted to them between 2009 and 2020. I had written 140 articles, and they had been read over 4 million times. That's a lot. That's one website. I was on there. They were in England. I was on 24 Hour Gold, which is out of Canada and France. I was on Gold Eagle, which is out of the United States. Now I don't write anymore. I said my piece. I basically stopped writing around 2014. I mean, I was just repeating myself. I stopped. This is the piece. This is where we're headed.
live long and prosper.